Yo, what's going on, everybody on the Real Sports Talk? What's good in life? What's good in sports? My name is Akeem Balaam, giving y'all the recap of the 2013 All-Star Game that just concluded from Flushing Meadows, New York's Citi Field, and the American League is once again back on top with a 3-0 victory over the National League to win their first All-Star Game since back in 2009 when the All-Star Game was in St. Louis at the new Busch Stadium. So going into this All-Star Game, and by the way, just for the record, of course, Mariano Rivera named your All-Star Game MVP. So look, just going back, looking at this game and the way that that it was going to be looked at. Of course, it was very hot in New York City at the time. Of course, they're going through a huge heat wave up there in New York, so that's why it was somewhat predicted that maybe it was going to be more of a high-scoring game. Maybe it was going to be somewhat of an offensive output, and that it really wasn't going to be all that much about pitching. Well, I kind of took a different stance on this going back when I looked at the previews, because most of these All-Star games the last few years have been rather pitching centric. Most of these All-Star games, they have been low scoring. There have not been all that much runs scored, and it really is sort of fitting that many of these All-Star games as of late have been very low scoring, because we're entering an era of baseball where pitching is becoming more dominant. I mean, the era of the home run, okay, you can say that was probably aided by steroids or not so aided by steroids or whatever, but the era of the 40 and the 50 and the 60 home run seasons, that's pretty much out of the way right now. We've moved back almost into old school baseball, where it's more about getting pitching, good pitching, where it's more about getting those big hits and pretty much playing small ball as it used to be back in the 90s, when guys would just come up and they would just hit balls into the next city. So it's fitting that that's the way baseball is played, and it was a 3-0 victory for the American League once again. It started in the fourth inning, in the top of the fourth inning, when Cabrera got on base. If I'm not mistaken, Cabrera got himself a double, and then Chris Davis singled to move Cabrera over. Chris Davis singled to move Miguel Cabrera over to third, and then Jose Bautista sac fly to center to drive in Miguel Cabrera. That put the American League on top 1-0, and then the American League would get another run in the fifth. They went up 2-0, and then another run in the eighth to go up 3-0. That run in the fourth inning that the American League got, that snapped a streak of, if I'm not mistaken, 17 consecutive innings that the American League had been held scoreless by the National League, going all the way back to 2011. When the All-Star Game that year was in Chase Field in Phoenix, Arizona. So definitely the American League certainly getting off the schneid, and of course they were shut out last year 8-0 when it was in Kansas City's Kauffman Stadium. So there was that definitely as well. And it was really the National League that looked like the way that the American League had looked the past few years. I mean, the National League was only able to muster 3 hits overall. They didn't score a run, obviously, and they were only able to muster 3 hits. One of them was by David Wright, who really, since it was in Citi Field, was really the grand marshal for these couple of days of All-Star festivities. And then they had another hit by Carlos Beltran, also a former Met, now currently a St. Louis Cardinal. And then their third hit came in the 9th inning via the Arizona Diamondbacks' Paul Goldschmidt, who doubled with 2 outs left in the 9th inning. So not a very good offensive output for the National League team, as they go down once again to the American League by a final score of 3-0. So, and also, of course, everybody's going to be talking about some of the other things that went on in this game, of course, and also with there was that moment earlier, and I believe it was in the 8th inning. It was in the top of the 8th inning. Or was it it was the bottom of the 8th inning, rather. I'm sorry, kind of all over the place a little bit. But it was in the bottom of the 8th inning. I don't know what they was doing. I know that they had Neil Diamond sing Sweet Caroline. Of course, I guess it's a tribute to Boston. And I guess once again to show support for Boston, especially after what happened after those Boston bombings. So they had that happened, which is it's a Boston tradition, even though it was in New York. Obviously, the game itself it was in New York, even though they had Neil Diamond singing. But what a transition out of Sweet Caroline and into Mariano Rivera's Enter Sandman, as of course he came in the 8th, got the 3 outs. Very cool moment, very cool tribute that was put on by baseball and the Mets to Mariano Rivera. He came in the 8th, and it was and everybody was pretty much off the field at that point. Nobody from either the American League or the National League came onto the field. He pretty much just waited, and everybody gave him a standing ovation all throughout Citi Field. Not to mention both teams gave him a standing ovation. They mentioned at one point on the game, they mentioned how Mariano Rivera is universally, he's one of the few players that is universally respected across both the American League as well as the National League. So definitely cool moment. Best moment of the game, definitely. The best play of the game was that Manny Machado play in the 7th inning. Huge play by Manny Machado, showing why the Baltimore Orioles are indeed in contention in the American League. But certainly the best moment was in the 8th inning when Mariano Rivera was able to come in and pitch in his final All-Star game. Even though you can say, how come Jim Leyland? Because the rationale that Mo gave when he did the interview with Ken Rosenthal, the rationale that he gave was that Jim Leyland wanted Mariano Rivera, he wanted Mo to pitch the 8th inning just in case maybe something crazy happened in the bottom of the 8th inning where maybe the American League blew a lead and Mariano Rivera wasn't able to pitch in the 9th inning, because there would have been no bottom in the 9th inning for Mo to pitch in. So that's why, according to Mariano Rivera, that's why Leyland had him pitch the 8th and why he didn't have him go in the 9th when he was speaking to Ken Rosenthal after he was done pitching. So certainly that was that, and why he won the MVP. And not to mention that sweet Corvette 2014 Corvette Stingray ride. Don't you just wish you had one of those things? But certainly you know, cool moment, and kind of an entertaining game as well. Not much offense, but certainly an entertaining game as well, with Mariano Rivera pitching in his final All-Star game. And I also reckon a lot of fans who are watching on TV probably are going to be either happy or not so happy that this is also going to be Tim McCarver's last All-Star game doing color commentary as well. But you can say what you want about that. So the American League is victorious. Final score 3-0. What you think of the game? What you think of that? Well, of everything that happened? American League fans, National League fans, and also a lot of Yankee fans, I reckon, are also going to have chime in on this with their reflections of Mo Enter Sandman in his last All-Star game. So rate, comment, react, reply, add, and subscribe. Look forward to reading your comments as always. So until next time, I'm Akeem Balaam for the Real Sports Talk. American League wins 3-0. Mo wins your MVP. AL gets home field in the World Series. See you on the internet somewhere.